through those kinds of notices. As I'm thinking aloud, I'm hoping
there's a lot of complex information that's been simplified, and I love the addition of all the graphs and the pictures. It's really clear that how the money's being spent, and I wish we'd done it a long time ago, but we're doing it now, and a job really well done. And I just hope that we can disseminate the information in as many ways as possible, because people are curious about how we spend our money, and this tells them in a way that's really understood.
Good comments. Other questions, Councillor Durrell?
Thank you, Chair Henry. This is more of a comment. I am so pleased with this in the sense that it's going through the strategic pillars. I think that this is a beautiful addition. It, to me, was the most readable financial document we got this week, just saying. There's a lot. But no, I think for me, it's, as we sit around this table and oftentimes through the Finance Committee, it's report after report after report. And what I love about this is it's put it into exactly what we've told the citizens and what they elected us to do. And I think it's very readable. So I was happy to see that. It was nice to see the King Street scape make it in as one of the notables as well. It's not something you highlighted in your presentation, but I think it's something that's dramatically changing our uptown. So I'll just point that out.
Thank you. Mayor?
Same thing. The strategic pillars was key for me, is separating out and also showing ward by ward what's being done, and showing how infrastructure renewal is where over half our projects are, or about half our projects are. So just seeing that reinforces what we already know, that we need to make more investments in infrastructure. So thank you. Well done.
You're welcome.
I think as I pull from the report, in addition to the glowing comments about the utility of that kind of simplified, easy to understand narrative and visual format of information, I think the flag for council is the notes that Kim mentioned around 2019 budget conversations and how we can think a little bit differently about cash flowing these projects so that we can get some closer alignment, perhaps between spent versus unspent. In part because it could make it easier, and also makes it more challenging in some ways for finance staff to stay on top of it, but also for us to think about how many projects we can take on with those dollars and know which dollars are available at what time. And I think that goes more broadly to the conversation we're having around the long-term financial strategy and the asset management strategy, about looking at every possible area that we have in practice, in information and support, so that we are leaving no stone unturned as we seek to tackle this infrastructure challenge that we, as many cities do, have, and that the public knows that we're doing that, as we also come to them to ask to do more because we know that we need to do more. So we are leaving no stone unturned, and this report is an example of how we're continually looking to improve and then report back to citizens on what we're doing. 314 active projects. We do not have that many staff on those active projects. It is a very busy plate that our staff manage today to stay on top of all of that. And I think that may help citizens understand sometimes when it takes a little bit longer to get a reply to some of these things, when you're shuffling the 12 projects that a project manager is trying to actively manage and get on top of it and go back and look things up. There's a lot of work being done. So with that, I think we just have a recommendation to receive, but I think we do so gladly. Who would like to move to receive? That would be Mayor Jaworski, seconded by Councillor Whaley. All those in favor? That's carried. And I think, Councillor Durrell, when you said this was the most beautiful part of the report, you might have made Paul feel bad with his 2017 consolidated financial statements.
Paul and I talked in the elevator. He knows how I feel.
I take no offense.
You take it all in balance. Anyways, we'll...
Thank you. So it's time for our yearly... path down the consolidated financial statement road. I think just to remind you that these statements include the consolidated results of the library, the BIA, also the modified equity pickup of the Water North Hydro, and once we get Council's approval, the auditors will finalize the statements with an unqualified opinion, which is good news in the auditing world. overall, I think the statements do show an improved position over last year. Revenue exceeded budget in most areas, and expenditures were within budget in all areas except amortization, which we do not budget for, so we can't really stay within budget for that one. The statements do show an audited surplus of $32.5 million. That includes the operating surplus of 1.9 that we presented to you last month at FSP. The rest of the surplus isn't available for use in reserve. It's already being collected and used for specific purposes. $44 million was collected and used for capital projects. 3.7 was collected and used for debt repayments, and then the audited surplus was reduced by various non-cash items, most notably amortization by $17.5 million. The reserve funds showed a small increase from 16, but they're basically staying stable, and the debt per capita has decreased slightly, even though we did have a $4.1 million issuance of DC funded debt in 17. And then finally, the net book value of tangible assets has increased significantly over 16, and this is because of our capital assets additions exceeding amortization. So that dovetails nicely into what Kim had just reported on how many projects we have on the go. We did have a staggering amount of capital additions in 17. So graphically, this is what this is a total revenue for the current year compared to prior year and budget. And again, as I said, in most areas, the current year exceeded both prior year and budget. And then on the expense side, the notable item here, when we compare prior year to current year and budget, is the amortization, which we do not budget for, but it's a consistent amount from year to year. And as I was saying, the tangible capital asset additions this year were well in excess of last year and the highest in the last 10 years, and were almost double the amortization. I think the word of warning here is we don't track. We're starting to track what the capital additions are made up of versus growth versus replacement. So next year we'll have a little bit better data on that, because in order to decrease the infrastructure deficit, you need to invest in replacement type and repair type additions. So obviously, I think the asset management plan has pointed out that the heavy investment will continue to be needed to bring that infrastructure deficit down. And as I said, the reserves show a bit of fluctuation in the two previous years, but stabilization this year, and overall they've stayed fairly stable. But again, the asset management plan has identified significant need, which will likely lead to those reserves decreasing in the future years. And this graph just shows the tax-based, tax-funded debt. And again, over the last decade, they are showing a good positive trend downward. And the green line is our comparator group. So we're still above our comparator group, but we're getting closer to it, which is good news. And finally, we also have a financial dashboard that has 18 additional measures that we track and compare to current and prior year, and compare to provincial medians and other targets. Those are posted on the website and show similar trends. So I'll bring Tom up shortly to say a few words, and if you have any questions, I'll pop back up when you have those as well.
Thank you, Paul. Chair, Mayor, members of council, senior staff, and other people present. My name is Tom Mennel, and I'm the lead engagement partner for KPMG, the independent external auditors of the City of Waterloo. With me today is Brendan Hall, the senior manager for the audit engagement. We are virtually complete our audit of the financial statements for the year ended December 31, 2017, subject to the approval of Council. We have completed the work necessary to form our audit opinion, which included meeting with the Audit Committee on June the 7th, at which time we presented in detail the findings of our audit, and we discussed the financial statements at that time as well. We are prepared to provide an unqualified or clean auditor's report of the financial statements, and it will be dated today, coincident with the approval of Council. We like to note that we have worked with staff to implement the recommendations that we made to them in the past. We believe that there is a focus on ensuring that the processes around accounting and the financial reporting are continuously improved, and we certainly appreciate that. We have no significant control deficiencies that we identified and reported to the Audit Committee, and we certainly appreciate the preparation, assistance, and cooperation that the finance team has provided us in the conduct of our work. We certainly be happy to answer any questions that the committee has with respect to the audit. Thank you.
Thank you very much to both of you. Questions for our illustrious accountants, both internal and external? Seeing none. Councillor Durrell with a comment.
As I was saying to Paul in the elevator, I read a lot of financial reports. They're mostly from startups. And so getting to read this was very refreshing. Well, there's more money than we're spending, which is kind of novel in my world. But overall, I mean, what I said to Paul, and I think it's good to repeat, but there's a lot of numbers here. But overall, it looks like we're in good financial state. I mean, that's part of what we do around this table is make sure we're in a good space. I'm not an auditor, but I appreciate your comments. It seems like everything's on the right track, and with confidence we can pass this, correct?
Yeah, and we're tracking in the right direction. They're definitely showing improvement year over year. We're staying within our budget on the expenditure side, and we're exceeding budget on the revenue side. So those are good positive things. Again, the word of warning is debt levels and infrastructure deficit are two big things out there that will be items that will have to be dealt with in the future. And I think that's all I can say about that right now.
And I think good financial planning is part of getting that debt down. But the infrastructure deficit is something that you flagged earlier as well. And at the end of the day, I mean, what I kind of keep understanding about that is there needs to be an influx of dollars from either the provincial or the federal government to actually help with that. Is that kind of where we sit here?
I would say through you, Chair Henry, that there needs to be an influx of dollars from somewhere, whether it be taxpayers at the local level, at the federal level, at the provincial level is yet to be determined.
Any further questions or comments, Council? Looking for a mover then of our consolidated financial statements. Mayor Jaworski, seconded by Councillor Durrell. No further comments. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you both very much. Next up, we have the 2019 budget strategy and update. Are there any comments from Ms. Reynolds or Mr. Witzel first, or just here for questions? Any questions, Council, on the 2019 budget strategy and update? Nobody wants to look that far? Okay. So I'll begin, since we're on here. Is there I think the Mayor and I were talking earlier, is there where would be the opportunity, based on the timeline that staff have set out, if the new council has issues that has come up through an election cycle that they would wish to consider addressing as part of the 2019 budget cycle that would be outside of how staff have gone about preparing this in accordance with this council's strategic plan.
Through you, Chair Henry, our intention, of course, is to release the budget in December 10th, which is shortly after inauguration. So certainly as early as that, we are happy to receive any feedback from Council. Through the month of January, we will be presenting our business plans. So there will be 3 different public meetings at that time, where certainly we can also entertain any concerns from Council or thoughts around what that budget should look like, as well as a capital meeting in early February, and then the actual budget day planned for, I believe it's February the 10th, if I recall. So there are multiple check-in points that certainly the new council can address staff and make known any concerns or wishes that they may have as a result of our recommendations in December. Does that help?
Yeah. Any questions, council? No. I'll just add my own comment then before we accept the report as information. I think it's helpful to see how staff have taken the feedback that council provided upon reflection of the 3-year budget process and incorporated it, I think, so well to the outline that I'm seeing here for 2019 in terms of some simplified presentation and the way staff plan on dealing with the inflationary, core service and growth, support elements and the service level change elements and anything else per the question I just asked that may come up, now or in the future from council that we wish to address. It does appear that the process should be relatively, streamlined, understandable, and clear for folks, and I think that will be of benefit to whoever sits in this chair on budget day. I know I've had a lot of fun doing it this cycle. Some meetings have been more efficient than others and less painless than others, but always fruitful, I think. But to get to where we're trying to go in an effective and clear and understandable and concise manner, I think, is where we all want to be, even if the days in February are not as nice as the days outside today. Here in June. So if there are no other comments, I'll take a mover and seconder for receiving his information. Councillor Whaley, seconded by Councillor Burke. All those in favor? Carried. Next up we have award of tender, RFT 18-08, Pond 53, retrofit and sediment renewal, and awesome testing of potential massive money-saving things. Councillor Whaley?
I don't know if we have someone here who can answer this question. I didn't know where Pond 53 is. I don't know where it is. It didn't say in the report where it is because it's a really interesting pilot project that you're taking on here. Very exciting environmental consequences. It's a big story, I thought, but I couldn't even find out where the heck it was.
And I think was rather than is, given how full it might be, maybe an adequate indication. Jessica?
Through you, Chair Henry, to Councillor Whaley. There is a project location map on the back. So it's actually located up near Laurelwood, off Laurelwood Drive. It's actually called Creekside Stormwater Management Area, but I memorize all the pond numbers, so it's pond
I didn't see the map. Now I see it. Oh, it's pretty significant, isn't it?
Yeah, it's quite large and long.
So I thought about how innovative you were going to be using some of the sediment and putting it to good use, and I wondered what this might mean, for example, in the coming years for Silver Lake. Would some of the lessons learned there be potentially an opportunity for Silver Lake?
Yeah. So a big reason why we decided to do this pilot study on this pond was in anticipation of Silver Lake, because obviously the quantity of material in Silver Lake is equal to almost the sum of all of the other facilities in the city. So the impact-wise for that would be we'd be testing out the sediment in the boulevards on the Columbia Street extension, and we'd be looking at it over a couple years of growth, and then coming back to the MOECC and saying, look, it's growing, it's doing just as well as any other boulevard or median that we have in the city. And then that gives the MOECC hopefully a comfort level so that when we come back with the business case for Silver Lake, that they would allow us to do beneficial reuse on that material.
Wonderful. I'm looking forward to hearing back on the success of it.
Yeah, and if at that point in time when we do Silver Lake, we did get approval, we could be looking at least a couple $1 million in savings just from avoiding tipping fees at the landfill. So,
I think given overall the stormwater utility has a gap on the asset management scale of up to about $3 million a year, and a good chunk of the work that we do is pond clear out. I think this is a significant potential funding strategy for that small element of our broader infrastructure strategy if it works. And whoever is thinking of government relations for the new provincial government, maybe this could be, as you're working on it, an excellent tour for a new Minister of Environment on ways to save people money, be better for the environment, save landfills, save trucking costs, and save everybody, I guess, their tax dollars or whatever the line is that we're going to be hearing for the next 4 years. So it could be an excellent showcase opportunity for Waterloo on red tape reduction or whatever other things we're going to hear that we can put in the brochure. Councillor Burke?
Yeah, it's not a question, it is a comment, because it's so nice when we get a note from someone who lives in the area asking about what seems to be a completely unrelated thing, and then we're able to come up with this kind of answer. And that was last week where a resident of that area, the Clare Hills area, asked about some shrubberies that they had concerns with being overgrown. And it's in the exact part of Columbia where we're going to try this pilot project. And they were actually happy to hear about the pilot project, more so than they were about the trimming of the shrubbery. It was, they actually really got all the things that Councillor Henry just talked about. So I think it's really interesting, the things that we don't think about that are actually coming to bear here and making a difference. So good on you. I hope it works and you have wonderful sediment.
I think Monty Python would be proud with your shrubbery anecdote. Mayor Jaworski?
Thank you very much, through the chair, to Jessica. On the FCM investment of $350,000, what are our reporting requirements on that? Like, does that become part of the story, or is it strictly a grant and they don't want any feedback? Or how does that work, and how does it be taken in the broader context?
So through you, Chair Henry. So the reporting will be, once the project is completed, we'll have to report back to FCM with all of the project costs, and I think the installment for the $350,000 comes in February of 2019 once everything's completed. So we basically just have to document what we've spent on construction and consulting fees and all that, and that is what becomes a part of our reporting.
And do they need the end part, like years down the line when we go to the ministry and things like that? Is that part of it, or our reporting to FCM actually ends in 2019 after the project's done? So
it's certainly something that's helped with the whole regulatory approvals process, to say that we've had support and funding from FCM, and they've been able to speed up the process for us in terms of permitting, at least from the MOECC side of things. So I think having the support of FCM is something that does help.
Wonderful. Thank you.
I will look now for a mover. And seconder, Councillor Burke, seconded by Councillor Durrell. Any further discussion or comments or just enjoyment at the sludge from storm ponds being used for good things? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's carried. Next up, we have Rim Park Diamond and Soccer Field Amenities, release of development charge funds for the site. Staff, I think Kevin here just for any questions. Folks have any questions, Council? Councillor Durrell?
My daughter is a volleyball player, and so we got rained on. And so this is like one of the perks, because I was kind of sitting with my ball cap, because few people knew as a city councillor as we were moving everyone around, getting rained on. So I'm happy to see that we're going to be fixing that roof in a big way. And I can't wait to report back to the Volleyball Association that we won't have issues next year-ish. How long will this take?
I think that's a carry forward on the next item on the agenda. So I mean, we're on the amenities out in the sports field first, and then we'll get to the roof leaking. Yeah. It's a warm day. We'll go with that. Yeah, I think this first piece sounds like the ability to pee out by those sports fields without doing it illegally and generating tickets for Mark's group. Yeah, so, well, inside the pavilion rather than outside the non-pavilion right now. So, anyone looking to move this item then? Councillor Durrell, Councillor Veith, any comments? Seeing none, all those in favour? That's carried. Next item, response to Councillor Durrell's question about roofs leaking and timelines, Mr. McGregor.
Through you, Chairman Henry. If once we get the go-ahead, we're in a position to proceed right away with the engagement of a consultant. If we can negotiate the fee with the roof consultant that did the preliminary study, that would accelerate things, but it would depend on what their fee is if it's within our purchasing bylaw. If it's above that, then we would go get quotations. So once that's done, we would be proceeding right away. So the plan would be to get it all done before the fall.
I think this is, again, a useful note about the infrastructure gap that we have. The assessment report, Mr. McGregor's report, highlights, identifies really a $6 million, we need to spend it now to fix roofs on both these facilities. But by cobbling together this year's funds from 2 projects and from next year, we're able to do a very small portion of that. But we're prioritizing it for the most critical areas and the highest risk. But we really need to do all of it, and the funds just aren't there at the moment to be able to do it. And citizens don't really notice that facility deficit until it starts dripping on their heads while they're trying not to slip around too much playing volleyball. Councillor Veith?
I'd like to move this motion. This is way overdue. There's the pickleball people are really upset too. They use most of those floors out there at Rim Park, and they come out there and there's buckets, and so it really gets in the way. So, and then I feel really terrible about what's happened with the library at McCormick. So I'm hoping that this can be done and fixed up well before the fall. So happy to move the motion.
Moved by Councillor Veith, seconded by Councillor Durrell. That's good. Any further comments, Council? Seeing none, all those in favour? That's carried. No consideration of notice given at a previous meeting, no notice of motion at this meeting, no communications and correspondence either generally or from the region, no unfinished business. Is there any new business, Council, that you'd prefer to do now rather than after the very long meeting tonight? Seeing none, any questions, Council? Seeing none, adjournment. Look for a mover of adjournment. Councillor Veith, please, somebody second that. Councillor Burke. All those in favour? Carried. We are adjourned. We'll see some of you this evening.